Hello, my friend. I am mr.xdreams, your guide in this place that lives in the twilight between the waking world and the dream world. You're now listening to the Dreamercast. Here we explore the stories and ideas that, I believe, connect all human beings across both space and time. Monsters, magic, gods and ghosts, the multiverse. There is more to this existence than meets the eye. But I tell you the truth, friend. Stay with me, and you and I will together witness the birth of new worlds. Welcome to my realm. Welcome to the Dreamercast. Hey there, my dreamers. If you enjoy the show, don't forget to drop me a nice 5-star rating on iTunes. It really helps me out, and I would appreciate it very much. And by the way, if you have a paranormal story of your own that you'd like to share here on the Dreamercast, head over to my website, mr.xdreams.com. That's mrxdreams.com, where you'll find a story submission page along with links to my merchandise, YouTube channel, and other ways to support the show. If this is your first time here, welcome, my friend. I'm glad to have you. If not, welcome back, my dreamer. I want you to open your mind, listen and consider these stories and their implications. Understand that the machinations of this world may be stranger than you once believed. Now, let's get into some stories and discussion here on the Dreamercast. What you are about to hear are allegedly true stories, told by and discussed with the very one who had the experience. Enjoy, my friends. All right, my dreamers, welcome to the show. Once again, you are listening to the Dreamercast, and today we have a guest all the way from area near Manchester, England, who's going to talk about a very haunting experience, an encounter with a fox-like beast in a parking lot of all places. Now, this thing was hit by a car, and you'll be surprised to hear about what happened next. Please welcome to the Dreamercast, all the way from the UK, Scott.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here. So it was a very odd experience, what happened. You hear all these stories about people, like, experiencing cryptids and spirits in, like, woods and mountains, but mine was just in a suburb. It's a very strange thing. The world is a strange place. I'm sure many people know that.
Absolutely. So, let's get right into this story. You sent me an email a couple of weeks ago, and you were gracious enough to donate some of your time for the show, because I really wanted to talk to you about this experience that you had. It's a visceral quality to it, and it's not something that I've come across very often. You know, seeing some type of bizarre creature in the middle of a populated area where there's roads and there's interaction. You know, I really am interested in sharing this story with the Dreamercast. So thank you again for coming. So let's get right into it.
Right. So what happened was, I believe it was in October in 2013, and it was roughly about 10:30 at night, and I was going to go and see my granddad. It was my granddad, and we were going to, I think my mum made too much food because it was like a big party the night before, and we went to go and visit my granddad to drop some off for him, because he's quite an old man, and sometimes he does forget to eat. He's a very what's the word? Arrogant man. So if you ask him to do something, he won't do it, and he's very British, let's say that. When we went to go and see him, we dropped off the food and nothing weird happened, and I wanted to go and see his 2 hunting dogs. They were Cocker Spaniels, very beautiful dogs. I just went out, and there was like this strong like sulphur smell in the air, and when I went in and asked my granddad what the smell was, he just said it was rotting meat, because what he'd done is apparently he had a rat problem that was like getting in and attacking the dogs. And what I found very weird was, I don't think rats would attack hunting dogs. Like, that's a very weird thing for me to like visualize, like a rat, which is a rodent, that could easily be taken down by one of these dogs, being bold enough to attack a hunting dog. So this was where the first weird thing happened, which was obviously that. And then I went in to go and talk to my granddad, and just as we were going to leave, it stuck with me this. My granddad, who is a very serious man, put his hand on my dad's shoulder and said, "Careful, son. There are some very weird things out there." And I'm genuinely a very skeptical person, so it's not like my area is a rough area, but there have been some very, like, in the recent years, like, crime has been going up, which is quite sad. But at the time, I was just assuming, like, he was just giving my dad, like, a warning of, like, just be careful, it's dark out, just be careful. And then my dad got a message off my mum and said, roughly, you need to go to the shop to go and get some groceries. So we did, and it was just a simple night, really. Nothing really weird had gone down. So we just drove to the shop, and when we got to the car park, we parked up at, like, I think it's like the top right hand of the car park, which was facing a road, and on the other side of the road was a dirt trail, and it was right near what we call I think it's a swinging bridge, and pretty much it's a bridge that can rotate roughly about 90 degrees to let ships past, because this is on what we call the Manchester Canal. And when we parked up, a bulb had gone on one of the street lights, so it was like a blackout area. So there's no light hitting this area at all, other than from the shop, because the shop has windows. And my dad was in there for roughly about half an hour, and nothing. And I was just sat there in the pitch black. And when my dad finally comes back, he just gets in the car, loads up the groceries into the boot, and not a sound other than maybe a couple of cars passing. And in the time that my dad had been in the shop, the swing bridge had closed and moved to let a ship past. So there was absolutely no traffic moving or going anywhere. So we sit there for roughly about another 20 minutes waiting for the bridge, because there's no point in trying to get out, because we have to cross this bridge to go home. So we just sort of sit in the parking lot, listen to the radio, and then when the bridge finally comes back around and opens up the road, the traffic starts moving, we decide we're going to leave. So my dad puts the keys in the ignition and the lights come on, and there's just this massive grey fox just in front of my dad's car. And this is a fairly normal thing, but it was a very big fox. Like, I'd never seen a fox that big. I've seen like a couple of foxes, but they were all like very like shy creatures. And what this creature was doing was very bold. Like, normally when they see street lights or headlights, they cower and like try to get away from it, because they're mainly like foragers and scavengers. But this one, when the lights came on, it just stared directly at the car, and it was there for, I think it was about 5 minutes, and we just made eye contact with it. We were in shock, really. We'd never seen something like a fox that close, because you see them darting on like the side of the roads into bushes, but never one like just dead on in front of the car. and where the car was like looking, there was a small gap in the hedge where the fox was, and it was just staring at the car. And my dad went, "Look, a fox," as if I was stupid. And I knew exactly what it was, but I mean, it was enough to bring me out of it, like, because it was like I was in a trance. Like, I was just looking at it for like 5 minutes. I had no idea. Like, it could have been 5 minutes. It could have been 15. I have no idea how long I was staring at it for.
And this is while you guys were waiting for the drawbridge to close.
This is why while the bridge was swinging round. I think this was just when because they've got like these barriers on them and they were like lifting up. So this was when traffic was about to start moving again. And I started to get like tunnel vision. Like, I just lost my peripherals. I was just fixated on like the eyes, and they were like a ambery orange, and they were glowing. And my dad, he doesn't seem to remember looking at the eyes. He didn't seem to have the same effect as me. But even if I was to ask him like today, he'd still remember the fox. But after however long it was, my dad decided to honk the horn to get it to like shoo, and it didn't. After he honked the horn, it didn't move. It didn't flinch or like jump or anything. It sort of just calmly turned round and walked onto the pavement. So like I think, was it a crosswalk? It might have been a crosswalk. And it sort of just waited like with its back to the car for maybe about 2 minutes. I'm out of the like trance I was in at this point, and I just wanted to see what was happening. And then after a small gap in traffic, it walks out into the road, and then a big Ford Ranger comes down the road at roughly about 40 miles per hour, which I think is about 65 kilometers per hour, and hits this fox like straight, like in the middle of it. And obviously, because it had speed, it did fall and it did get air. But I felt like I was seeing all this in slow motion, because I remember I watched like the entire, like, on the impact, I just watched the fox like bend on impact, and then it bounced off the road once, and then the big Ford pickup just drove over it as if the driver hadn't seen it. And it's not like the driver tried to pull off and stop.
He just plowed straight through
it and didn't stop, and he just carried on. So, and then there was, now I can definitely say this car saw it in the road, because it swerved round it, but it did clip its rear legs, its hind legs, as it went round. So it hit its back legs, and it had been completely ran over. So at this point, it looked like roadkill. And then me and my dad were in shock, really. I'd never seen anything die before. So this was quite a big thing for me. Like, I hadn't even had a pet die at this point, so this was quite a heavy thing for me. But then, after about 5 minutes at looking at this ball, just this like mangled pile of meat on the floor, it got up. It just completely stood up, and it looked a lot darker than it did, and a lot bigger as well. Like, it looked very broad now. And it just stood up, and it wasn't limping, and it just walked across the other 2 lanes of traffic. And it was just, I don't even know how to describe it. I can barely comprehend it now. It was such a incredible thing to see, really. Like, I was just in disbelief. Like, this thing had just been run over by a massive pickup truck, and then it had its legs crushed. And then it gets up and walks. Like, it walks so calmly. Like, it was I'm baffled by it still. I don't understand. Like, a fox cannot take the impact that it took and get up. Like, nothing can take that, unless maybe it's a bear. But it wasn't a bear. we don't have bears in the UK, so it couldn't have been a bear, and it just walked across, and after it crossed the road, it went onto like the dirt path, and it just disappeared into the night. Like, that was the last time I ever saw it, and it was a very crazy experience. Nothing after that happened. That was it. There was nothing, like, there was no freak accident on the way home or anything like that. We just drove home, never spoke of it again.
That's a really interesting scenario there, because like we said earlier, you don't commonly see things like this happen where there are multiple interactions with other people and it's in a somewhat populated area. How tall or long was this creature that you saw?
Well, before or after it got hit, like I said, the size changed. So before it got hit, it was maybe about maybe about, I want to say like maybe a meter off. I'm not too good with my measurements. I'm so sorry.
Like tall off the ground?
Yeah.
About a meter?
Yeah. Like from its head.
I think that's pretty tall for a fox, I think.
It was eye level with the car, but like, I want to say with like the steering wheel, like just as it was, like, so it could see. It was making direct eye contact with me dad, pretty much, but then it like shifted its eyes to me, and it was
what kind of vehicle were you riding? We
were in a Vauxhall Mariva.
So is that like a sedan
that's
or?
Like, that's a sedan, I think. Hang on.
All right. So, yeah, I'm asking because, being eye level with a sedan is kind of different than being an eye level with a pickup truck, for example.
It definitely was an eye level with the truck, but it was like to the bonnet of the truck.
Okay. So one thing that strikes me as interesting in this story is that you mentioned the Ford hitting this creature initially. He just plowed right through it and didn't seem to react in a way that most people would when they're hitting something.
The car reacted. So, like, he hit it. You could see the car jolt, and then, like, he definitely, I watched the wheels go over it, like, the suspension reacting and everything. But the driver didn't seem to. Like, the driver just kept on going.
So he must have known that he hit something, but either he was just the type of person that doesn't care if he hits things and just keeps going on, or maybe he just didn't see, had no idea what he hit.
Maybe he just assumed it was like a speed bump or something before the bridge. Like, it makes sense. A lot of the bridges in the area do have speed bumps before the bridge. So maybe he just assumed it was that.
So when you say this creature ended up looking like roadkill, did you see blood or exposed flesh or anything like that?
Well,
I want to know, how bad was it injured?
Didn't bleed. Like, there was no blood, but it looked mangled. Like, you could see that its legs were in places legs shouldn't be. Like, its legs were bent, like, up its back, and it looked flat. Like, it looked extremely flat compared to how it looked. Like, it might have not been very broad when it was looking at us, but it was definitely a lot flatter than it was. Its neck looked broken as well, because when it got hit, it like did a roll, and it looked like it did like a cartwheel on it, and it landed on its neck, and its neck was like upwards. So it was pretty bad, and there was a lot of like bad scratches and like fur, but there was no like blood or like exposed bones or skin or anything like that.
So I did some research about this, looking up like a large fox-like creatures, and the one thing that I came across was saying that the largest fox on the news for the UK that I saw was 4 feet long, so like a little over a meter long from its head to the tip of its tail, which means that it's no way it's a meter tall. You know, so
Yeah.
this seems like what you saw was much larger than a normal any length, because that 4 foot long fox is seen as like a freakishly large fox.
Yeah.
So what you saw was orders of magnitude larger than that.
Yeah, it was definitely very abnormal because, like I said, I've seen foxes and they're like no bigger than like an adolescent dog, really, like a golden retriever. They're no bigger than that, like an adolescent, like just coming out of like being a puppy. Like they're no bigger than that. So this was like gargantuan compared to it. It was absolutely huge. I can't really say it was like how long it was because I saw it like head on, like it was facing the car. So, and the way it turned, it was always like on a curve. So I'd never be able to give you like exact like length, but it took it a while to get round, especially because it was like a tight gap in the hedge as well. Like it was only like enough to fit its width into the gap, and it had to like turn itself and like do a wind. It was almost like a snake how it turned, but it was like abnormal. That's the only word for it. It was.
And you're familiar with the way a fox looks. I mean, you see a creature, you know a fox from you know, a wolf or a coyote or some other type of canine.
Well, we don't have. That's the thing. That's the crazy thing. We don't have coyotes. We don't have wolves. This is really the only type of animal like a fox in the area, other than maybe like a wild dog or like a freakishly large cat. So there's no real other candidate it could be, really.
That's crazy. You mentioned in your email the name, the Barghest. I believe that's how they call it. How do they pronounce that?
It's the Barghest.
Barghest.
It's like an Anglo-Saxon shapeshifter. So it's normally, it can be called a black hound, it can be called a shuck, or it can be called a Barghest. And
there's tons of names and different.
There's a lot of names. It bounces around cultures a lot.
Mm-hmm. Urban legends.
Yeah, a lot of urban legends. It's yeah.
And that's the thing that makes these types of stories so compelling to me, because it makes me wonder, all right, did someone at some point just say, hey, you know what, guys? And they just make up a story. Hey, I saw a giant wolf and, you know, this is what it looked like. And then people hear that story and then people start saying it and they start seeing it. To me, it's more reasonable to believe that someone saw something that someone actually saw something, or multiple people saw an actual thing that led to them saying that. And it's not a lot of times where people just start making claims en masse that they've seen something and they're making it up out of whole cloth. And the fact that there's, you know, these things, I've seen so many different names: the Black Dog of Winchester, the Demon of Tidworth.
I'm sure the one you must have heard of is the Hound of the Baskervilles.
Yeah, which was a Sherlock Holmes
it's a book. Yeah, there's been a lot of things. There's like the Beast of Bodminton and things like that, and they just don't really seem believable. But like, you don't really believe these things until they happen to you, do they? Like this was my experience, but I'm sure like other people have had odd experiences like similar to this, but people are just like too scared to say. And it's not like I can just claim that this fox is like a skinwalker, because it'd make absolutely no sense for like a American legend, like a Native American legend, to be in the UK.
Yeah, and trust me, I mean, I can tell, well, the way that you speak about this and the level of details you're able to recall, to me, I feel like that your story is completely authentic, and that you did see something that, you know, you seem like a smart person. You would know if, intuitively, okay, what I'm looking at, this is a giant fox. I know what foxes look like. I know what things are not around here. That is a fox, and it's way bigger than any fox that I've seen growing up in this area. There's no reason to really question that. The weird thing is just, this is something that is really bizarre that happened to you. You happen to be there with your dad. And this is one of those stories that's like, in these myths with all this, the description online of the Bargahest is a monstrous goblin dog with large teeth and claws that appears at night and is basically seen as an omen of death. See, all that stuff, there's like some legend that gets folded into these types of things eventually. But at the core of it, it's like, hey, somebody saw a giant fox and there's something weird about it. And that's what you're basically experiencing, the baseline, the original basis of what became an urban legend later. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand. And it's funny that you'd mention like it's an omen of death as well, because, well, my granddad's not died, thankfully, but he's had like a lot of like very strange accidents. Like, he's a builder and he works on like in the area, and he was working on a house. Yeah, I think he was painting it, and out of nowhere his ladder just completely collapsed, and it actually threw him into a swimming pool that was also being built. So it's not like he was just falling from the height of the house, he was falling from the height of the house and a little bit further, and it was enough to get him hospitalized, and he was in quite a bad way for a while. And as of recently, he's just come out of a heart bypass as well. So he's just started having really weird heart complications out of nowhere that he's never had before. It's not like he's got any genetic issues either. So it's very weird.
That's an interesting element to the story, because your grandfather was the one that initially warned you guys about weird things being out there. So conceivably, he might have seen something similar at some point.
He keeps a rifle in his house, so there's every chance that he could have seen it, shot at it, and whatever he shot at has decided that it will do its job and try and just bring pain. I mean,
yeah. Or I always try to drill down to the core of these types of things and try to find natural explanations before before we go into the supernatural and paranormal stuff, because to me the supernatural and paranormal explanation is like the last, that's the last resort, if we can't think of any other reason, because my mind is working with the details and the facts of this story, and I'm thinking, okay, how did the mythology start surrounding these creatures? And what would make sense to me is someone like, say, your grandfather sees something really crazy, something that he can barely explain, and then later on, whether it's from as a direct result of his seeing that creature or not, some tragedy were to befall him or his family. And a lot of people fall off of roofs and they get paralyzed or they die. So if someone happened to see this creature and they talk about it, and then something happens and then they die, all of a sudden that's one point towards this sighting of this creature being an omen of death. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And thankfully for your grandfather's situation, and for your family's sake, it didn't work out that way, which is great. Lucky. Yeah, that's awesome. But you could kind of see how, if given a long enough time frame, something that with what you saw was absolutely bizarre and very hard to explain as it is just by itself, but the extra elements can be added into that by whether it's coincidence or whether it's actually a part of the whole, the big grand scheme of the existence of this creature. We really have no way of deciding that one way or the other. But this is definitely a fascinating encounter that you shared with us, and I have to thank you again for taking your time. I know you're in school and everything, and I got up extra early just to make sure that I wasn't intruding on your schedule or anything to do this interview, but I very much appreciate it.
Yeah, I know you're a busy man yourself, so I thank you again. I mean, it's been incredible sharing the story. I really haven't been able to share it anywhere else, and it's been quite incredible to just talk with you, hear what you have to say about it, just open my eyes a little bit more and see if anyone else has anything to add to the story as well.
Oh, absolutely. The pleasure and the honor is mine, my friend, and it's always a great experience for me too, talking to people and getting their individual story from them. I can ask questions. I don't have to take 2 weeks emailing back and forth. This is definitely my preference now that I've been doing it this way. I hope you have a great day, man, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. I know hopefully you don't have a bunch of homework to do or anything like that.
Oh, don't know the half of it.
What are you studying? If you don't mind me asking.
I'm studying to be an engineer, hopefully automotive. So, at the minute I'm at a specialist college for it. So, they're piling me with the work at the minute, as it's coming towards deadlines and things.
All right. Well, let's make a new urban legend surrounding this giant fox. If you see a giant fox, you are destined automatically to become the world's greatest automotive engineer of all time, and that's what I think is going to happen to you, my friend. And I wish you the best of luck with that. And there you have it, friends. Yet another fascinating look beyond the veil. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope I've convinced you to take another step or two down the rabbit hole. Make sure you subscribe to the Dreamercast, so you never miss out on our next unique journey into the realm of mystery. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to drop me a 5-star rating on iTunes. It really helps me out, and I would very much appreciate it. I'd love it if you shared the show with your friends and family, anyone with a taste for the truly fascinating questions that we explore here. If you have a paranormal story of your own that you would like to share with me, head over to my website, mr.xdreams.com, where you'll find a story submission page along with links to my merchandise, YouTube channel, and other ways to support the show. Until next time, my friends, I'm Mr. X Dreams, and I hope to see you again soon on the Dreamercast.